This is where I think we want to shift into the reasons why we don't grow, the reasons why we don't move towards our audacious outcomes. This is pretty basic stuff. The difference between guilt and shame. Okay? Guilt is a feeling of responsibility or remorse for some offense, crime, wrong, or whatever, whether real or imagined. So it doesn't have to be real. It could be just something that you feel bad about, okay? And it's not always doing something wrong. Sometimes it's failing to do something good, okay? So, and churches are pretty good at making people feel guilty, okay? And feeling guilty is, I mean, if you have a child that has done something wrong, even they're an adult child, and they don't feel any guilt about that, you have reason to be concerned. They could be a sociopath. Okay? All right. So guilt isn't always bad. It's just an appropriate response. On the other hand, shame is something else. Shame is the intensely painful feeling that we are unworthy of loving and belonging. Okay? So guilt is something I can take care of. I can confess to the crime. I can do the time. And when I've done the time, I shouldn't necessarily have to feel guilty. Shame is much more complex than that. It's much more difficult to deal with. So guilt is I've done something wrong. Shame is there's something wrong with me. Okay? And it's an awful thing when we communicate the shaming message because you can't take that garment off. Right? You could carry that the rest of your life. We've all grown up with that old proverb, sticks and stones can break my bones, but what? Words can never hurt me. Actually, that's not true at all. Bruises, physical bruises actually heal, bones mend, but some of the words spoken over us by our parents, by significant others, teachers, ex-spouses, right? That sort of stuff has been so shaming that we're still carrying those messages and we think there's something wrong with us. Now, some cultures are more guilt-based and other cultures are more shame-based. Okay? White Western culture is more guilt-based, right? And Eastern culture, Asian culture is more shame-based. And so white Western culture is much more focused on the individual. So it's, and the Eastern culture is focused more on the group, especially your family unit. So I remember talking to my non-Asian friends growing up, and they felt bad about doing something, but they didn't feel the burden that they just shamed their whole family. Whereas I grew up with like, don't do this because not only may you end up in jail, but how is your family ever going to have to be able to put their face in public again, right? If you do this. And it's like a whole heavier burden to carry. And so sometimes inadvertently, we let that in an Asian-based setting, we let that shame-based orientation, that wiring, actually color the gospel. And so there's a shaming message that actually gets communicated in the gospel that there's something wrong with me. I'm not worth loving and belonging unless, right? And it's like, that's what we say here at this church. It's like we perpetuate the elder brother or the prodigal son sort of syndrome. Like, I don't have any worth to the Father unless, right? And look at my shameful little brother who went prodigal, squandered the inheritance, all that stuff, right? So he's not worth loving and belonging. And look how shameful my father is. It's like he's bringing him back home. He's giving him the best clothes and jewelry, and he's throwing a big party in his honor. How, that is so antithetical to shame-based culture people. I like this picture. So there are actually two forms of toxic shame. Okay? The person in the middle is full of shame. So they're absolutely convinced that they're not worth anything. Okay? But the people around the person who are shaming them are shameless. Okay? But those are both forms of the same thing, toxic shame. Okay? Now, toxic means what? Bad for you, more than bad for you. It's poisonous, right? It's killing, right? And so we can understand how if you're full of shame, that you are convinced that you are totally not worth loving and belonging, how in a Christian setting, in the face of the free gift of grace that Jesus offers, how that can be life-killing, right? Because it'd be like those the person, Jesus, don't look at me. Like I'm a leper. Like I'm the town harlot. I'm the tax collector. Everyone hates me. I have reason to hate myself. So I can't even receive the gift of your love because I'm full of shame. Okay? Who helped convince this person that they're worthless? It's all the people in town going like this. Right? It's all the shame, shame, shame people. I don't know where that came from. It's like, what does that mean? But it's that whole, yes, you are the worst person in town. And in contrast to you, I'm the paragon of all that's good. Okay? Because I'm not the harlot, I'm not the tax collector, I'm the rabbi in the synagogue, I'm the person that keeps all the kosher laws, right? I'm the one that is the rich young ruler, that I've kept all your commandments. There's this whole sense that within even a church setting, that there are probably a few shameful people, but most of us are raised to be shameless. Now, I think in reality, we're a combination of both. I think that underneath this pharisaical shaming other people, quick to judge, there's this secret shameful person thinking, oh my gosh, I can't let anyone know some of the things that are going on in me or in my past, right? Or in my thought life or what I'm struggling with, because if they did, I'd be out too, because I know what this club is all about, because I'm a member in good standing. So do you understand how there are two forms of toxic shame? One is where they take the identity of being shamed, and the other one is they reject the identity because they're always busy shaming other people. Okay? And what was the reaction of the shameless people in the New Testament to Jesus? Jesus, we need you. Thank you for coming. No, right? It's just like, you're a heretic, you're a blasphemer, you're not applying the scriptures correctly. All that kind of stuff, and you're associating with the shameful people. So obviously, like you aren't a really a spiritual person. You're not a prophet. So both are found in the New Testament. Both are found in Scripture, and both actually don't have a place for Jesus in their life. Does that make sense? Right? So one says, Jesus, get away from me. I'm a man of sores and uncleanness and stuff like that. So I recognize that you have this virtue. I am just unworthy of it. The other person, right, is more like, Jesus, we can't stand you because we know what righteousness is and you're not it. We are it. Okay? And so, and that you're no respecter of what gets gets everyone to love and respect us in our community. You actually call us whitewashed tombs and broods of vipers. It's just like, you don't even know what you're talking about. We're the pillars of our church, right? So in both cases, they reject Jesus, but for different reasons. But in the rejecting of Jesus, that's toxic because Jesus is the source of life, right? He's the vine, we're the branches, but we cut ourselves for two different reasons. Okay. John Bradshaw in the 80s was really popular. He wrote Healing the Shame That Binds You. I still think it's a very interesting book. If you ever want to really explore toxic shame and healthy shame, this book is still available. But this is what he says. The most paradoxical aspect of neurotic and what we call toxic shame is that it is the core motivator of the superachieved and the underachieved, the star and the scapegoat, the righteous and the wretched, the powerful and the pathetic. So he's saying this is interesting. Toxic shame or neurotic shame, where you're thinking about it, you're worried about it. It's a neuroses. It's like it's actually behind both polar opposites. It's the superstar and the last one picked, and it's like, so it's universal. Okay, it's universal. All right, so now I'm going to have Ryan talk about, and this is the money part of today, how do our totems influence our toxic shame? So this is my dolphin intuitiveness. It's like the streams converge. That we're all of us, regardless of your totem, we all are dealing with toxic shame, either shameful or shameless, but there's a specific way that our totems actually nuance that shame. It doesn't speak the same language to every totem, okay?
So it's interesting that when we originally started making these graphics, I told Ken, hey, let's put beavers in the front. And so, Ken, when you go to the next slide, he puts a dolphin in the front. So
I was getting bored. It was beaver all the time. I had to make a change.
So I'll let Ken talk about what is his insights on being shameful and shameless, just because I think he could speak as to that, being a dolphin himself.
Well, I've shared a lot in the context of the last 20 years that I didn't realize what a shameless Pharisee I was until I started doing my ministry to the recovering drug addicts. Okay? And that to me was God's primary reason why I had to spend 20 years there, because every time I walk in that room, I naturally think, losers, winner. Like God must be so upset with you, and he must be so pleased with me, because I'm into comparative worth. Okay? I've been taught that in my family, in my culture, in every church that I've ever been part of, is that you can judge other people. You're qualified. Okay? And so how easy is that? You walk into a room, regardless of what degree they have or don't have, whether they were deacon in the church before, some of these kids were pastors' kids and missionaries' kids. It's like, whatever was true about you, you guys have majorly screwed up because you have taken and abused drugs. You've lied to everybody that's ever trusted you and loved you. You've basically jacked up your life. And then there's me, right? It's like, I've never been drunk. I don't like the taste of alcohol. I've never tried pot, right? And it's like all these kinds of things. So I'm just that one category. Comparatively, who's the superstar, right? So I walk in there, and I'll tell you, for about 5 years in the beginning, I came up with this introductory exercise, because there's different people every week, even though there's some people who are continuing. And so as an icebreaker, I would say, all right, so let's just start over here, and we're going to start with Angie. Just tell me your name, how long you've been in the program, and what was your drug of choice. Okay? So these folks know that to be in this program and to lie about anything about who you are is contributing to your own death. Right? That they've hit bottom. So they've been stripped of pretense. So Angie would stand up. It's like, hi, my name is Angie. This is actually the 4th program I've been through. I'm not proud of that. I've been here for 9 months. And my drug of choice is crystal meth. Okay? Thank you, Angie. Sit down, right? Next person. We go to the whole room. Then it was my turn, or anyone that came with me from church. We kind of automatically gave ourselves a different set of questions. Hi, my name is Ken, and I've been coming here for 15 years. Good, nice to be here. Okay, and then the rest of the church goes, yeah, hi, my name is Stu, and I just came with Pastor Ken the last 3 months, and it's good to be here. Right? And so I was like, how come we don't share our drug of choice? Right? It's like, and the interesting is the shameful people never challenged us on that, because they felt like, yeah, we're the screw-ups, and you guys, aren't. And so that began to slowly bother me, that we were hiding in plain sight. I was hiding in plain sight, right? And at the same time, I felt like, well, I don't know that I have to go out and actually smoke crystal meth and actually be able to contribute here. I realized that my own drug of choice, as I've said it here in church, my own drug of choice is self-congratulations. It's hubris. It's excessive pride. It's giving myself too many pats on the back because I'm so much better than somebody else. Now, I thought about sharing that, but in that context, they're like, really? Like, woo, that's like, man, I can see how you're just really wrecking your life. And I am, okay? But I thought, okay, so rather than go that direction, that's where I came up with this thing that we used for the next 15 years was, state your name, how long you've been here, and just say that you're a valuable mess. Okay? So people would go around, it's like, hi, I'm Sharon, I've been here for 2 years, and I'm a valuable mess. Invariably, when it would come to a newbie, someone who was first time sitting in my Bible study, they were like, hi, my name is Ryan, I just been here 3 days, and I'm a horrible mess. And then everybody else would go, no, you can't say that. Right? And they go, there's no value to me. It's like shameful, right? And they say, no, you have to say, and whether or not you understand it, you have to confess that you're a valuable mess. And they're okay, I'm a valuable mess. Right? And they're like, And so we'd finish the whole room, and then I'd go back and I'd ask someone who's been in the program longer. I'd say, okay, Marcia, can you stand up and explain to people who are confused why we say valuable mess. Okay? And it's so good for me to hear it too. It's like, well, because both are true. On the one hand, we have incredible value to God. And if that's all we think about ourselves, we get a fat head. If on the other hand, we think we're just a mess, which is also true, then we think we're not worth saving. And so the truth is, whether you feel both or not, the truth is those two things together. Okay? That took me a long time to figure that out. But what I'm saying is the best thing that I learned in that place was I was a shameless neo-Pharisee, as we say here at the church, that my worth was something that was according to my standards, not God's standards, and that it caused me to look down my nose at other people who knew that they were full of shame. And so then, as long as I kept that shameless attitude, no matter that I was teaching them the Bible, I was of no use to them because I was talking down to them. Does that make sense? Okay? And not talking on an even level. That's why I say when I took my theology exam at Fuller several months ago, I said to the gathered faculty that was there, I said, I'm a double graduate of this school, but I learned more in 20 years standing in front of a room full of recovering drug addicts about the gospel than any time I spent in an academic institution that studied the gospel. Does that make sense? Because I think the institution tends to reinforce shame less. It's like, oh, you get to be a professor because you're not a horrible sinner. We don't hire horrible sinners, right? The thing is, Jesus taught it's not overt behavior, it's who you are. So you could be the best church-going, pastor's kid, whatever, and you're still just as sinful as the person who is utterly lost, right? Because you're taking credit for the good works, and therefore you're shoving Jesus away. I don't need you because I'm doing pretty good myself. Okay, so does that make sense? So my shamelessness actually converted to shamefulness without ever taking drugs. Did you catch that? I don't have to take drugs. I'm already on drugs. Okay, but it's not the kind you stick through a needle in your arm or you smoke through a pipe or a cigarette. It's like I take the drugs that we hand out every Sunday at church. In public, yeah. Okay, and they're acceptable drugs.
So what does it mean to be shameful? According to personality theory, it's whatever the totem seeks for, they feel like they are not. For instance, an owl seeks knowledge. They feel like they do not know enough. So I just want to get that clear.
Yeah.
So you beavers out there who are thinking now, what do you think that would make you feel shameful? What do you guys seek? Security.
Accomplishments. Okay.
Yeah, security through accomplishments, through working hard. You feel like you may not have worked hard enough, so you might be completely exhausted by working too much. So I want to make that clear. And then when you're shameless, you feel so great about yourself because you feel like you've actually done what you're striving for, and you're like the winner, the gold medal winner, standing on the podium, the highest one, and you're looking down on everyone. And so it's interesting too. The differences in this is that Ken comes from a shameless angle. I'll come from a shameful angle. And so since owls tend to focus on knowledge, they feel like they're not smart enough. The reason why I did not want to teach personality theory back in October when I started was because I didn't feel like I knew enough, and I didn't feel like I had the ability to communicate personality theory to people. So the first thing I did when my friends told me, oh, I need five or six different friends told me I need to do it, and they'll bring people to a class, a free class. So the first thing I did was study more than I ever had in a short period of time. Why? Because my insecurity was that I didn't know enough, but I was studying the wrong thing all the time. My work was invested poorly because instead of learning more about the theory, what I should have been learning is learning how to communicate to people. And so my first meeting, man, it was bad. It was really bad. In my head, A part of me says that it's good though, because I covered so much information. But I think I was doing a soliloquy. I think I was talking to myself the whole time. Like, see, you do this, and wow, I didn't communicate anything. And that's what happens when I'm shameful. That's what happens when I have an insecurity of not knowing enough. How that manifests is that I explain to people all my knowledge and communicate to them zero. So that's the example for it. And then example of me being shameless is when I took 2 classes maybe to understand why I wasn't communicating well. Is because I learned that people learn by examples. It's like, of course, duh. Like, well, that's why we tell stories. Jesus tells parables all the time. But can anyone tell me why you think that I do not like to give examples? I do not like to give examples. It's a waste of time, exactly. That's perfect. It's perfect. I was answering all my questions. I love that. It's because I feel like if you give someone the formula, like I'll give you an algebra formula. Now, anytime you encounter this situation in real life, you can figure it out yourself. That's so much better than giving examples. Well, the problem with that, what do people do with formulas? They don't remember formulas. No one remembers formulas. No one knows how it works. People don't understand what E equals MC squared was. I just learned that a couple months ago. What does this mean and how does it work? People don't understand formulas, and so the whole time I'm communicating for 4 hours, because those 2 classes, first 2 classes, like, what did I actually communicate to them? That was kind of embarrassing for me. But at the same time, I felt kind of self-righteous in the sense that, man, people, they would understand me if they took the time to study.
Like me.
Like me. They should have done their homework. They could have studied for 5 hours and come back and had the same knowledge as me. Why? Because I gave them all the right formulas. Oh, right. Expecting people to be just like you. Expecting people to know what you're thinking. Expecting people to work as hard as you. Expecting some people to be able to figure things out without instructions. That's how foxes are. They're so good in game time situations. They figure like, well, why did you do it this way? And that's what it means to be shameless. I learned that in massage. Though I told you this before. The way I study massage, first and foremost, is understand the bones, the muscles, where the muscles insert and attach, or their origin and their insertion. I learned what type of movements people do, and learning what kind of injuries may result from the kind of movements that they do in sports or working out. And then, after you know all that, then we could get to the massage. So you could see how terrible I am at communicating to my therapist how to massage. Why? Because they just want to know where to press. I'm like, no, it's so much more than that. You got to know this and that. And so after a while, no one asked me for help. It's like, oh. So there I am again, being a resource that's untapped. I know a lot, but I can't communicate anything. And so that's why it's so important to know how to connect with you, develop that F side, that NF dolphin side. Because if I have knowledge that I cannot share, it's useless, worthless. And so that's what it means to be shameless in this example. Oh, then we move to beavers already. Okay, so beavers, especially if you're an introverted feeler beaver, you're afraid to make mistakes. Yeah, I feel like thinkers feel more about they're not working hard enough. And so I teach a class for fun again, a newer class, and they're learning about how to grow in their personality type and apply that to their business. And then so I came up with several superheroes that each person can choose from based upon their personality types. So this girl is a ISFJ, and I say, okay, here, you get Superman. And so I said, so what I want you to do you're carrying the Superman picture with you, and I want you to come up with an amazing goal that you want to accomplish in the next 2 weeks, or take a huge stab at it, meaning you're going to get it done in the next 2 months, and I want you to embody the ideals or the strengths of Superman. So I want you to do some research, not long, 10 minutes, talk about some traits that Superman has that you want to grow into, and some traits that Superman has that you can recognize in yourself. So she's like, okay. I mean, is that clear? I mean, when I say is that clear, would anyone have questions after I gave that assignment out? I thought it was pretty clear, right? It sounded clear to me. Maybe it's because I end. So the next day, I happened to run into her, and she's like, oh, Marshall, well, I'm just wondering, what does it mean to have an amazing goal? I'm like, whatever you want it to be. Oh, what do you want it to be? I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't even matter. Like, so that's an example of a beaver being shameful and not wanting to take any sort of risk because she's taking this class to satisfy me and my homework assignment. And I'm like, do you understand that you're doing it for yourself? So the reason why you use amazing is so that you could feel it in yourself, define whatever amazing is. Oh, okay, so I did this thing in the past, and I'm going to do it again. What I mean is, I've done like these sort of open houses that work well, and I'm going to do that again. Well, your amazing goal is to do something you've done in the past. Yes. Okay, that is not amazing. I can tell you that is not a definition of amazing. The definition of amazing is what? To do something that's out of your comfort zone, at least a little bit. Because if you don't do anything out of your comfort zone, you're never going to grow. So that's example that I have for being shameful, for being a beaver. And then so in terms of being shameless, this might hit home for people, like going to a church, not this church, but going to a church where they do not focus on any topic of hypocrisy. Be like this, don't be like that, don't be like that. And then, well, all of a sudden, you're in a situation where you're talking to people who are not the ideal. Why? Because no one is the ideal. And so being a shameless type of church would be a church that doesn't figure out ways that we can love people who are difficult to love. That would be a shameless church. And what would be the consequence of that? The consequence is that you might have an institution that might fail. I think a Catholic church was like that at one point. Or an institution that goes stagnant and people are going just because they're comfortable, but you're not getting anything out of it. You're just going there and you feel comfortable, but you're not being fed, and you're definitely not feeding into the church. So that's an example of being a shameless type of beaver environment. So being an artisan, they're concerned with the fact that they're not talented enough. They want things to come easy to them. And so they think that in order to be great at something, you were born that way. They don't realize the type of hard work that is involved. Example I have is aspiring artist who was my cousin growing up. And my cousin, by the time he was 13 years old, in my opinion, he drew amazing. He would draw Voltron, he would draw Transformers, and freestyle too. And I thought it was pretty amazing. And so when he graduated high school, he did what every Asian should do and go to college. Right? If you're Asian, you have to go to college. And so he went into Cal State LA, and in his 7th year in, or 6th year in, I wrote him a Christmas card and just told him that I appreciate him and that he should do what he loves. So in that year, within that next year, because that was Christmas time, he dropped out of college. Like, oh shoot! I meant to finish college and then don't use a degree. That's okay. But as it turns out, that he made some T-shirts and he sold some T-shirts, and he met a boy in a Boy Scout uniform who I was his scoutmaster, assistant scoutmaster here at Evergreen. And he said, oh, do you know Marshall? Yeah, I know Marshall. Well, it turns out his dad was the president of Hanna-Barbera. And he saw his work and said, oh, hey, do you want to come in for an interview? Sure. So he ended up working on Scooby-Doo movies and Johnny Bravo and Cartoon Network. He now works for Disney. But he even won a Academy Award for what he does. He's a storyboard artist. And to be honest with you, I don't know if he could have been as good in anything else. I don't think, I mean, he felt like he was insecure that he wasn't born with enough talent. But what do you need to be great at something? Beavers? Hard work! Hard work! It should roll off the tongue. To be great at anything, talent helps. You need to have some sort of starting place. But it's going to take a great amount of skill set. That skill set has to develop through hard work. And what does it mean to be shameless as an artist in Fox? Do you guys remember the basketball player Allen Iverson? He was on the 76ers. And does anyone remember his famous quote? Thank you. I knew someone would know that. I knew someone would. So he's talking about he's on a press conference, and he's the best person on the 76ers. And everyone in our country has some sort of affinity towards Allen Iverson because he's really tiny. He's about 5'11", about 165 pounds, 170 pounds. So people can relate to them, respect him for his game. And his team was built in such a way where everything revolved around him. If he didn't shoot the ball, the offense didn't work. It was a defensive team, and he shot the ball, and the other people would help him out by getting the rebounds, giving it back to him, or they'd put in a layup. So that's how the team was constructed. And so in one of their losses, some reporter said something akin to, Mr. Iverson, is it true that you don't try your hardest in practice? And then Allen Iverson's reaction was, practice? Practice? He's like, I'm doing all these things and you talk about practice. Practice. And so he said it like 4 times. It was like a super awkward statement. But he's saying, hey, look, I'm the person on this team. I'm the best person on this team. The team revolves around us. Yes, I take time off about practice, but who cares? Because I'm the best player. And in some ways, that is 100% true. You are the best player. But, and you might not even get better through practice. You might not get better. But in terms of a leadership standpoint, in terms of taking responsibility for your team's standpoint, Foxes don't necessarily like to take responsibility for other people. That's where I believe that Allen Iverson lacked the ability to grow in that area. Take responsibility for his team, leading by example, and not only working hard in the games, but in practice as well.